Welcome back to Seeds. I'm here with Summer as usual. This is the part where she says, hello, seedlings.
Hello, seedlings.
There you go. In the way that only she can do it. We are so excited that you have joined us again today as we keep hashing over some of the basics of Christianity. Things that either we know, but we've kind of forgotten or let go to the side, or things that we just didn't know. Maybe we're a brand new Christian and we don't even know how to do this whole thing. So we've been talking about lots of things. And again, in fairness, we're down here all throughout the week and we're having all kinds of different conversations. And today we were having a conversation. And one of the things that came up was this idea about pausing, right? This idea that sometimes God pushes the pause button, right? Mm-hmm. So now I was talking to my friend Todd and I was saying to him, like, listen, it's good if God pushes the pause button, not good when we push the pause button, right?
Right.
So when I think of a pausing, right, I think of it this way, and then hopefully you think of it similarly differently so we can have a different take, right, is that God tells us that he wants us to do something, right? God has a plan for us. He reveals something to us. We get excited about that, right? We either start moving in that direction, start preparing for it, start actually doing it, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, something happens and it's all paused, right? It comes to a standstill for some reason. Now, I want to get into the possible reasons at some point, but when I think about that, I go to the book of Genesis, right? And I think of the story in Genesis 37 with Joseph. Right? And Joseph is handed a dream, right? Where the dream ends up really being about everybody bowing down to him, right? And not serving him necessarily, but presenting him with honor, respect, those kind of things, right? And he reveals this to his dad, he reveals this to his brothers, and their response, not good, right? And so Joseph gets this dream like, hey, you're going to be in a place of honor, right, in your family. And the problem with that is that he gets it and then immediately starts kind of acting upon that, right? There's kind of an attitude and kind of a expectation of, hey, God's going to make this happen for me. We know the rest of the story. It's a long time between those dreams and a little bit of slavery, a little bit of servanthood, a lot of prison time, and then finally, oh, the dream comes true. But there is a huge pause in between those two things, Summer. Mm-hmm. So before we talk about that, though, tell me, like, when you think about pause, what are you thinking about?
I think about just disobedience, and us trying to have control of our lives. You know, it's God tells us crazy things sometimes. And sometimes even his promises that are just right in here are the things that we're supposed to act on, and not something like different or new. And I think sometimes we just don't trust him fully, right? And then we pause or inch our way or like, they'll give you this percentage or that percentage. And it's just like, you're really just delaying like the good outcome, because like God doesn't ask us to do things so that like we have this horrible experience and do things go a certain way for us to learn things sometimes, yes, but like the end result, if God tells you to do it, is going to be good for you. It's going to be positive. So you're really just delaying what the thing is that he has for you.
So when we hear from the Lord, when God tells us something and we feel it very strongly, whatever way, we've talked about that. How do you hear from God? How do you know it's God's voice? Where do you hear from God? All those kind of things. So we're in our place. God reveals to us, much like he did to Joseph through a dream, right? Or in the example that you like to use or have used, which is the Abraham story, right? So God reveals to people certain things, right? And then there's this kind of process that starts to take place, right? Which is, how do we embrace what God has shared with us, right? What do we do with what God's promised us, right? So when God reveals something to you, right? How do you come to embrace what God has for you?
I've learned like you just do it, because there is like examples in all of our lives or examples in the Bible that you read where if you don't, like, you're just not going to be happy. like when Abraham made his first mistake, like he went through a bunch of strife. He screwed up, he lied, he did it his way to help God, right? And there's just strife. So you might not be like utterly destitute, but you're not really going to be fully happy. So it's like, I've just learned, like, okay, if I know this is God, yes, sir. Like, I'm doing it because I'm too scared not to.
So part of the deal is that maybe some of the reason that God hits the pause button is, and this is going to be self-convicting, right? So those of you who are watching, like this is me talking to Summer about myself, right? So God tells us something very clearly, makes it very clear. Like there's no other option. It's affirmed by other people. They hear a story and they're like, yep, definitely God thing, God moment. And then we start out with it, right? But somewhere along the line, we either get afraid, we get fearful, we get scared, or we just simply choose not to, like you said. We don't fully embrace it, right? So we half embrace it. Like, we know the difference. People who give you a half hug, right? They're like, oh, okay, good to see you. Their arms are stationary, And then there's the people like that just, they really embrace you, right? They love you. But sometimes is it possible that, like, hey, God hits the pause button because he said, you're not really embracing everything that I said here. You're not embracing who you need to be and what I've told you.
Yeah, I mean, I think he definitely does because, again, and it's just like what we just talked about in Romans, right? Like, if you're doing the God thing for the wrong reasons, and it's half-hearted, and it's just because God told me to, and I don't really want to do it, and I am totally fighting that in my heart, it's not going to feel good. It's not going to be, you're not going to be fully happy, and you're not really going to get the full blessing, because a lot of the blessing could be while it's happening, not just at the end. Right? So, like, a lot of people miss that, and they think it's like, oh, end result, what's my reward at the end?
Right.
And a lot of times the reward is throughout it. So I think he could push the pause button in the middle of it if you're flailing about in doing it for the wrong reasons.
Okay, so I think this is a great place to stop this time, and then bring it back next time and say, really challenge our listeners and our viewers. I guess it's viewers and listeners, our seedlings, right? To really look at, first of all, if you're in a moment of pause in your life, right? Is it, and maybe a moment of pause with some strife. Things just are off. They're always off, right? Is it possible that some of that strife is because you're not embracing what God has for you? Like, we can't answer that for you. We can answer that for ourselves, right? I know what that, when Summer was talking about that, like, immediately it's like, yep, I know what that looks like, right? I know what it's like to be off because you're just not fully embracing what God has told you to embrace. So we want to come back next time and talk about that. Are you embracing? How do you really get there? But then really, how do you get off the pause button that God has for you? Like, I get he pushes it, right? But I think we have a say in when he pushes the play button again. So we're glad you joined us. Hopefully you'll join us again the next time on Seeds.